Hey Caleb, how's it going, man?
Great. How have you been?
Been doing pretty good. You ready to talk about gear?
Every day.
All
Every day.
right, let's get started.
Join our challenges. The signal path.
Hey guys, welcome to the Signal Path, and today I actually have a very special guest, one of our long-term and founding members at TSP, Kaleb Young. What's going on, man?
Hey, it's good to see you. Good to hear from you. Everything's been cool. Have you been?
I've been doing pretty good. Been busy doing this podcast kind of thing, so I'm really glad
Nice.
you wanted to take on the challenge and jump on as one of our first Signal Path guests.
Well, I'm honored, and to be honest, I thought there was a lot more to this than there is. So I'm really, really excited about that.
Yeah, man, don't be nervous or anything like that. It's just us hanging out basically and talking stuff like gear, like always. So first met you back in the old page, which was called like literally guitar pedals.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. It was like 2018 or so. I think you were even a teenager back then, if I'm not
Awesome.
mistaken.
Yeah, that makes a that would be the case. And I virtually knew nothing. Uh, but it was cool to see how some members were very supportive, and the cream kind of rose to the top because I think he became one of the top members of that page. And then eventually, I think a lot of us decided all at once to just move to what is now the Signal Path. And uh, got nothing but love. It's just, that's a great page, and a lot of great supporting cast members too. I've enjoyed that the most about it is everybody's really supportive of each other.
Yeah, man, it's been a great vibes all around. Honestly, I think you were just a beginning guitarist. I think you were starting some of your first bands and that kind of thing. I do know
Yeah,
you met some really cool people. Like you got to meet like BK Butler and Eric
yeah.
Johnson, and I seen you got some close-ups of DB2, but I'm not sure if you really got to meet him or anything. But
No.
yeah,
He's he's the one I didn't get to meet quite yet, but still working on it.
yeah,
Like
man.
it'll happen.
Yeah, and you looked up and got to see the tour down there when they had like four shows or something like that. But that's pretty cool. Um, I did have you on a couple of challenges. I think one of them was just like the one pedal challenge, and I think you had like the Angry Charlie
Yeah,
was on that
yeah.
one.
This the Andy Timmons drive, and I actually gave that away for a pedal I still have on my board. It's a clone build. I'm not sure who it's built by, but clone build of a the Prescription Electronics Experience. It's a clone of that.
Okay, and we're talking like Marshall territory, Vox. It's probably got a good crunch to it, right?
Uh, I'm going to go on record to say it's a lot like a Big Muff with the octave option, and it has a really cool feature as like the third button, as I call it. But it's kind of like a bias knob. When you activate that, I mean, you can take that signal from extremely hot to, I mean, extremely, dull, and I mean, nothing really magic to it, but that pedal is extremely weird. I have to say, it's a very extreme pedal. Like, does a
Yes.
lot.
So you got that pretty much dialed in with your amps. What amps are you running now? I think you had like a Bandmaster or something, but you probably got something else going on, I bet.
Well, for the longest time, I was actually a Boogie Cat. I've owned several boogies. Nowadays, it's the Marshall Blues Breaker for the bigger things, and for some of the smaller venues, I'll run that Bandmaster with a small extension, whether that be a 112 extension cab or a 110. I do like the 10-inch speaker quite a bit, and that's a Jensen 10-inch speaker. Does that Stevie Ray thing at a really manageable volume without having to tear anybody's face off, and just good stuff.
Yeah, I hear you, man. So even like John Frusciante, you getting like those RHCP Red Hot Chili Pepper tones and that kind of thing?
All kinds of good chimes from that. Like really sweet for funk, R&B, soul stuff, especially the Motown, like Chinks and Chanks. I like using it a lot as like a blues setting, and a lot of those just legendary Texas guitarists, SRV, Eric Johnson. It'll do that Eric Johnson clean thing perfectly. I remember a couple of years back, I saw Eric up close. This one time, I actually got to meet him that night as well. He was running, instead of the two twins he's famous for, he was running two Bandmasters drip edge like mine. Like that was really cool to see, because I mean, in comparison to a twin, those are just 40-watt amps and like a lot less loud.
Yeah.
I've seen Eric with the twins, and it is that's a show. Like it is loud.
Man. I think you even demoed us like a fuzz face or some kind of, I don't know if it was the BK Butler pedal or if it was the fuzz face, but you demonstrated some Eric Johnson tones like when we first started the page for Signal Path and everything. I don't think you even remember that, but that's been a minute. But we were trying to get everybody as on the extreme side, getting like 100% engagement on the page, and you're like, hey, I'm just gonna throw this up this way, Eric, my inspired Eric Johnson tone. So I actually got a clip from that.
Well, man, and to be honest, this is one of my biggest regrets as far as a pedal guy goes, is that tube driver was supposed to be like a somewhat of a Gens Benz knockoff. It was supposed to be the more affordable version of the tube driver. And I picked it up at a guitar show maybe about a year or two before I joined the page, and got out there with it. And that thing it was so beautiful. Like it just had enough full bottom end and had enough low mids to really do the Eric sound. Then I went on this little, not tour per se, but just this little run with this band I was playing with, and we ended up in Wyoming, and I met BK Butler there, and I purchased the 5-knob, the real deal BK Butler tube driver. I was so excited. Got home, I plugged it all in. It does not sound the same. It does not do the Eric thing, and it just is
Yeah.
I sold that original tube driver that I had, that it was the Gens Benz one. I sold it only for like $100, and I traded $100 and a lot of George L cabling for it. And I still had a lot of cables to make, but like in my mind, I thought that was a pretty fair trade. But looking back at that, I wished I would have just kept that tube driver, because it just did its thing.
Yeah, man. And talking about your gear and everything, I didn't know if you ever got to experiment like wet dry and stuff yet and that kind of thing, but didn't you get like a 335 on top of having like a Les Paul and all that stuff?
Yes. My 335 was kind of a accident. So without getting too deep into like my personal situation, for while we were all on lockdown, they kept sending out stimulus checks. Just I wasn't getting any of them. There was a hang up somewhere. And so they all landed at once, along with a nice tax return. And so everything felt right at the time. And Dallas Guitar Show was within the same window. And, when in Rome.
Yeah, man.
Fell in my hands.
I had something like that similar happen to me when I was in my 20s, and that's how I got my dual rectifier. Was I got a pretty good tax return one year, but I was like, I paid in all that taxes, so I was paying in way too much. I decided to make sure I filed correctly, so I didn't hurt so bad during the year. But yeah, you learn in your 20s, man. In your 30s, you kind of refine everything. But one of the things we were going to talk about was like we've been talking about some boutique things, but I know you run some standard equipment too. So what's the big deal between boutique versus like standard equipment? What's your hot take on that?
Oh, I'm at the point now, man. It's more simple, more better. It's like MXR, the one knob stuff. I live for it. And there's so many standard companies now that do such a good job with overdrives or delay or modulation effects that you really don't need to spend, in my opinion, the extra hundreds of dollars to get kind of what you might be searching for. And so, yeah, I do have some standard equipment. Like for the longest time, I had a tube screamer. Unfortunately, I've just sold that off. I got a JHS Bonsai, but they're two different animals. And like the Bonsai is cool for what it is, but there's nothing wrong with a TS9 or an 808. There's nothing wrong with any of that.
They all bleed the same tube screamer honk.
Yeah.
Every single one of them. And the all the green boxes, some of the guys will tell you that their favorite ones like the Green Machine, like the Digitech box or something like that, and the Bad Monkey. And the Bad Monkey was like the modded like TS9 or whatever, but tube screamers are like a dime a dozen. Everybody makes one. Yeah. It seems like, yeah. Is there something that's coming out that you're looking most forward to gear wise?
Honestly, that Duelist like revision, because I know you have the Duelist, and I'm uber jealous of that one. I love that pedal. I've seen a lot of people use it as well, and one of my favorite guitar players, Josh Smith, he had one on his board for quite some time. Great sound overall, just both sides. But then I saw, Davies come out with that revision where he's got the sliders on the side that, you can really get custom with how each side interacts or how each circuit can do like an exploded fuzz face thing down to, cocked wah or, just so many options and variables. Now, I can imagine that's going to be a pricey pedal, but honestly, that I don't know what else anyone could possibly want. That would be like the Helix of overdrive pedals.
Yeah. That pedal for the V2, my biggest complaint was like on the Blues Breaker side, the heavy hand was always like when you got the gain like dimed all the way out, we had like kind of that high noise floor. So it had a, like if you running like a hot tube amp, and I would get down from a set and somebody's like, what's that noise? I was like, I got to turn that pedal off like every time. So I was trying to find something that was comparable between all those. I actually just recently took mine off the board, and I'm now running a Westminster E89, which is their Blues Breaker style, clean, transparent side and tube screamer side. So it's actually very nice. It's got a soft switch to it, and I don't have all that high noise floor as they call it. They really did their homework on that. Plus, there's more clip-in options, kind of like how the V2's coming out for Duelist. They actually have more clip-in options. It's a very affordable package for a dual pedal. So, I'm running with those guys. Plus, Cody's pretty local for us in South Carolina. He's a great guy, great builder for Westminster effects. So, wanted to make sure I'm shouting out to everybody that all the small builders and stuff that usually visit our page, and make sure that they're getting well represented myself. So, but I would say like the stuff that's coming out now. I've been looking at amps, and some of the newer amps now all have cab sims like built in them. All the Tone Masters are coming out with that glorified DI package, which they've done for years. I don't know if you ever heard of the Fender Cyber Twin, but that originally had some of the cab sims already kind of built into it in the XLR. So it had like a grounded lift XLR on the back of it back in the day. And to me, I was just like, that's plug-in direct. But now that I'm running 2 amps, it's kind of hard to run like 2 amp sims kind of thing. So I'm still trying to venture out how that would work. But after recording into DAW and learning how to do podcasts and everything, everything's going digital in a way, because you're all plugging it into an interface at some point. So that analog versus digital thing, almost everything now becomes digital, because if you post it on Facebook or TikTok, it's literally going into cellular data or whatever, So, but it sounds great live. Like, I'm sure you understand that on the stage side of things, but that's been my kind of thing. But seeing my rig and seeing the big boards, like seeing like Eric Johnson set up, dude's got like a tape echo like on deck on top of his. So you were talking about going down to one knob and everything. In your gear growth, how have you become more now a minimalist versus like having a really big pedal board?
That has been a trial by fire. And when you sit at home and you practice your parts and you have the time and the capacity to set every little thing up, and then when you hit the big stage, or what I say big stage, but you hit your bar gig, or you hit, this little gig spot over here, and I just never found myself using any of that. I never found myself using my tube driver live. I never found myself using a lot of things until, of course, that also depends on what genre you're doing. But for me, and locally, what's popular is, rock and country. And I just never found myself using a lot of those effects. But as I've grown to kind of chop down on that side of the spectrum, I'm really happy with that Love Pedal Chula on all the time, just like Josh Smith. And I mean, it honestly is, as he said, it's not for everybody. It is a really tough pedal to get in with and keep, because it is bright, it is loud, it is mean and aggressive, but it also has the best clean of all time. I mean, you roll that volume knob back, I mean, better than a fuzz bass. It's bliss. And
it's got like that natural compression thing, especially when you're running high volumes, like stage volumes. You're trying to cut through cymbals and everything, so that's something that you have to dial up. But my trick to what you're saying about the minimalist part is, if I'm not using it during the gig, I'm taking it off my board, and that's been kind of my trick. So if you found yourself doing that, like if I don't touch it, I really don't need it kind of thing, and it like lessens your signal chain, or improves, you get some of the top end back and that kind of thing when you have to, run things with more buffer. Is that some of the stuff you've been learning like the last couple of years with running your setup?
Well, to be honest, the biggest change overall to my whole board, no matter how big or how small I've run, is the power supply. I can't preach that enough nowadays. Okay, I was one of those one spot guys, for the longest time. And I ran a one spot for, all the way until I toured up to Wyoming. Even that gig, I ran a one spot. I just never saw or paid attention to how valuable legitimate power source was for pedals. But the game changed. I bought the Strymon power supply package, and I think I have the one that has like 12 slots on it, 10 slots, I don't remember, but it's beautiful. It brought my delay pedal to life. It brought a lot of my other pedals up to aptitude to where they're a lot more functional instead of starving themselves initially off of 1700 milliamps. Everything has its own power, and I can't hype that up enough. I've seen a lot of guys go the Fender route, get that engine block one. I still would like to have, some feedback on how well that's doing. So far, my Strymon unit has just been great. Now, as far as signal path and chain goes, I don't think I was actually ever running enough cabling for my high end to actually get cut out.
You didn't get real crazy with like 14 and 15 pedals running at one
time?
Never.
Never have been there. I never got to that land.
Yeah, I got in a real experimental side myself, so I was finding bigger power supplies every time. But what I did lately was that's the reason why I'm using bigger enclosures. So like the bigger the pedal, the less pedals I'm putting on my board. So I'm forcing myself into minimalist. But I've been kind of making a joke about it. Is a bigger pedal, is that bigger the tone? You see what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, Mike Matthews, he must have been onto something. That guy makes massive pedals. So
yeah, like the deluxe memory, man. It's like almost 2 clones or whatever. It's just huge, but man, like the chipsets, they're not even there anymore. Like everything's more the modern the PT2399N karaoke machine delay chipset that almost every delay pedal, even the jam pedal delay llama extreme that I have has that chipset in it. But trying to get tape sounds is what I've always been trying to chase. And I think you had like even like a belly pocket one time, or
that's it.
Yeah, you still have it. Yeah, so
we'll never let it go.
Yeah, those tape sounds is what I always chase. But I think originally I had like the L cap, and the L cap for me, not to hate on digital pedals, but it just had a weird power need, and it wasn't fitting with some of my supplies. So I always had to run it as an individual power supply just to get that the tape warble to work right and all that. But I am now running like 3 delays on mine because I just can't get enough delay, and I got my first taste of like real pedals probably about 2015 or 2016 because of delay pedals, and that's kind of where my start was. So what really got a grip on you about guitar effects and effects pedals overall? Like, what was your very first start with that?
Oh man. So really out of ignorance, when I was like 13 or 14 or so, and I wasn't even playing guitar at the time, someone gifted me a Vox Valvatron multi-effect pedal unit, and I didn't even know what to do with it. Like, it just was alien to me, but I held on to it, and then eventually started playing guitar, and I've spent hours just looking at what words mean. I mean, I didn't know what boutique OD meant, or, flange, or what did rotary mean or sound like. I just thought, oh God, that's crazy. Get that off of there. Or, the chorus, I thought, oh, that's really 80s or cheesy. I don't want that. And, I it's just, I was so dumb on gear for the longest time, but then I worked at a guitar store locally, and there's only been a total of a handful of employees that have ever just walked in, not known anybody, and got to be hired there. But I was one of them, and thankfully so, because I learned a ton. From that point forward, I understood what the market was on certain pedals. I didn't know necessarily what they did or how they sounded or what they could do for me, but I understood, this Boss DD7 was a lot, it was worth more than $65. So I just, I think my first thing I ever did as a guitar player move was I went to a pawn shop and I saw a DD7, for $80, and I chewed them down to $65 for a DD7. That worked beautifully. but then I didn't even know how to use it. So I just kind of had trade bait. And I was like, all right, well, I'm going to take this value and I'm going to get what, I think I want for it. And I traded that pedal at Guitar Center in Fort Worth for an MXR. It's like the Gran Torino or Il Torino drive. Terrible drive pedal.
Yeah. Was it gold color?
Mine was blue.
Or blue, yeah.
And that thing sounded terrible. I don't even know why I gave it the DD7. I would have more use for the DD7 now. But, I mean, that pedal, I just thought, I demoed it and I thought, oh, this is cool. Like, I definitely would want more of a, in my mind, a rock and roll sounding pedal than this just pedal that does crazy time stuff. And so I grabbed this pedal and I went and jammed with my buddy. And when the new car smell wore off, I just thought, man, this sounds terrible. Like doesn't have a good.
Yeah, so you got broke into that honeymoon event is what we call it when you get that new pedal day. Everybody has that little honeymoon event, and they're like, "Yeah, I love this pedal." And like a week later, they're like, "Hey, anybody want this pedal to trade?"
Right?
Yeah, we all kind of do that, and I mean, I do that, but I'm kind of over some of the standard stuff, and I'm sure you've seen my focus change where I'm trying to help small builders as much as possible. Everybody makes about a clone of everything, and clones are good. But I've been really trying to pull out those experimental, unique items, and where like fuzz is a rabbit hole.
Absolutely.
And that is something that I just could not go down that rabbit hole. I would be broke. It's trying to be a musician and have a collection of fuzz pedals. I had to choose one. It's like you kind of can have fuzz pedals and great tone, or you can gig and do the gig. And I chose that. I needed to support that habit, so the gigs turned it into pedals, and then I started doing that with fuzz pedals, and then I started doing it with delays and all my other extra pedals. But kind of what you're saying is you're using them like trade doubloons.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I got a few things that I call shelf riders that ride the shelf, so I'm able to trade later. And I've either tried to gig with it, or it's just not something I would use, or could dial up or anything like that. And they're not bad pedals. They're just I'm not able to use it for my context. And I try to play a wide variety too, so I'm not just stuck on like country, rock, and blues. Try to do some of the metal, and I've been doing a lot more acoustic lately because I'm trying to get back down to the basics. If I strip everything away and unplug it, once I plug it in, it just sounds over the top, because then you have effects and everything on it. So I've been trying to do that as a minimalist. But the boutique part comes in, and you're like, man, I gotta have that. And there's a few things that I would say is boutique, and being a delay pedal. And something I just posted this week was that Space Echo, and it's a compact version of the old RE20, and the RE20 is about 20 years old now, but it was a big box Boss delay that had built-in tap. Kind of like you had the DD7 that was a single box. Well, the RE20 was the double-sided. It had tap delay built into it. And that was a really cool pedal. And I heard you mention rotary. Another rotary pedal I was looking at forever was the RT20 by Boss, that did like the really nice Leslie sounds. But on the very boutique side, I've been looking at the Neo Instruments Vent.
That's the only way to go.
Yeah, that's what everybody is telling me. But the Terraform's been getting me by on it, and it does it. It's just I'm afraid I'm gonna break that little black button in the middle that goes through the presets, because I abuse that thing. But that is a Swiss Army knife in one box, that Wampler Terraform, and that's been kind of my rotary, my chorus, my flange, harmonic trim, you name it. It does everything, and it does it really good too. So I can't complain about it. I think I'm gonna try to pull some things off, and then just try to go to a single box on some things, just because I know how to use it and I know I can dial them in. But at the same time, trying to be supportive to a lot of the guys on our page and that kind of thing. But as a starving artist like everybody else, I've kind of met my cap on like where I know I need to be, like with like the medium drives, and then like with the high gain drives. they're kind of like flavors of ice cream, kind of like how fuzz was a rabbit hole as well. And we try to share as much as we can on the signal path, and that's where I'm always excited to share the gear, share videos, and making sure everybody gets their voice heard. So, how's your experience been on the page with all the interactions and the polls and the challenges? I'd like to hear your take on it.
Oh man, as much as like I can see them and do them, because I know on the past couple ones I've been slacking off, and a lot of the polls, like it just if it's in my feed, I definitely try to make contact. But yeah, I know early on in the page when there was only maybe what 50 of us or 100 of us. I mean, real small numbers then. Uh, I was trying to do everything, but now it's we've got a lot of members, and I'm definitely proud to be a part of that page and to be one of the, I mean, kind of original pioneers with you, and beginning that trek, because you and I think a lot of other people as well were kind of ill and sick of some of the people on the original Guitar Pedals page. It just became too much about something we weren't about. And, the signal path is a lot healthier in my opinion. And I like the challenges. It makes me think. And what I love the most is the takeaway from other people, because I mean, I can go down my own rabbit hole all the time. That's my choice. But to see what other people bring to the table is interesting, because sometimes I find stuff that other people enjoy and I love it too. Or sometimes someone nails a sound that I'm looking for, and it's easy to then ask like, "Hey, what are you doing?" Or what I think a lot of the time, as much as the polls and the demos come about, I mean, the group has been really awesome about answering questions that I have, because sometimes I'll throw in a question if I'm really stumped on a tone or a fuzz thing, or whatever it may be, and I get good feedback. I love that part about that page. I know it's kind of once in a blue moon I'll throw that question out there: who has this and what does it sound like? But so far, there's only been one builder that's wanting to build me one, but nobody has it. It's the Zonk. Nobody has the Zonk, and I really want someone to tackle it so they can tell me all about it.
Oh wow. I'm not sure if Trevor Twig actually has one, because Collector Effectors, Pat Brown, he's also, I would say, somewhat local for me because he's in North Carolina, but he makes a Zonk. And I think I even recommended him as who I recommended
he and
for
I have
you.
talked.
Yeah.
He and I have talked about one. It's just like, is for what he wants for one currently is, back to the pendulum of, rabbit hole, what this gigging musician can do. And it's like, well, I don't need it that bad yet. And I would love to purchase from Pat. I mean, I would love to see his work and get to hold it in my hands. I would love to hear it. I think his pedal designs are beautiful. I think he's fighting the good fight.
They're like way up there, dude, like with his build quality. Those photos, every time he throws a turret board up, is just incredible. Like, you look at all the components, and you got to think a lot of the components in fuzz, a lot of people don't spend hours trying to bias the any of the transistors or anything, but that it takes people hours, like with the oscilloscope, and to watch the waveforms to match, and then the voltages that are involved. It's incredible. Like when you listen to a fuzz builder, like the hours and the passion they put into to building the pedal. I mean, some people can spend 40 hours on building one pedal just to get it to that perfect tone, like like the old tone benders and some of the old fuzz faces, because all the variations in the component builds. But that that's masterclass, as I call it. And there's some engineers out there that because they're electronic engineers and they have passion for music, they spend the time and do the homework for it. So I always try to make sure I kind of turn my ear and like, oh man, like they just have the knowledge base there, and that's what I try to glean from and try to point people to the right direction. I was like, hey, this guy's really, he's done the homework. Like, listen to this guy, that kind of thing. And that's
Yeah, those people that are. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, you're good. Go ahead, man.
Those people that are doing the, very focused and attention to detailed fuzz pedals like that. I mean, those are our, like, Alexander Dumbles and, Ken Fishers. Those are our guys, really, because if it wasn't for those guys willing to sit down to do the crazy experiments with the vast amount of parts and, pay attention to every single little thing to get a certain sound that you can only find from, like, the finest cloth, I mean, we might not know what a good fuzz face is, or we might not know that we like bad components in a fuzz face that makes us sound good. I mean, there's just all kinds of variables.
Yeah. And there's a few guys I talk to daily that, they're building things now with, like, the Chinese NK 275s, I think is what it's called. But it's like the red dots and stuff like Animalog Man uses in his Sun face. And they're building incredible stuff. I know that John McCullough is building the bore pedals with that, and so is Antonio Rubio with the I think it's the ARF 66, which he just posted, and that thing looked indestructible. And these guys have a passion for fuzz to even take the lesser components and really upgrade them and spend the time to really get them to cutting edge. And that's something I always appreciate just listening, because, like, I can't hang with most of these guys that are just they're straight in engineer mode, and they can tell me about all these component values. And that's how I learn too, is I try to lean on everybody I possibly can. I'm not exactly a know-it-all, but if I don't know the answer, I might be able to find the person that does, and that's where I created the page, so we can all learn and grow from each other. Even like building the pedal boards. There's a couple of amp builders. There's a few guys that build pickups, a few guys that actually build guitars and basses. And we just got a wide array of people that, are just passionate about music and making, gear. And I try to make sure I try to support small business as much as possible. So that was kind of the whole purpose of the page, and really cut out the pretentious thing where, like you're not a somebody kind of thing. And and dude, I could make a Zoom 505 scream on stage. It's not going to hurt my feelings. Like, just because I spent hours on it as a teenager and know what it sounds like. Like, I could do this, or this. I mean, it is kind of a one trick pony in some things, but I could be playing that, or I could be playing, like a mezzo boogie or something. And it never bothered me. I tell everybody I'll play with 2x4 with strings just as much as I'll play like a Les Paul or something. Like, you got to make noise, man. And so,
I was going to ask you, what was your first pedal? Was it that Zoom?
Yeah, it's definitely the Zoom, man. So I was 14, 15 years old, and my parents didn't have much to give me for Christmas. So one year they took me to the pawn shop, and in the pawn shop was a Fender Frontman, which I think they wanted like $25 for. And it's a little small 15 watt solid state amp, and a PV Raptor. And the PV Raptor was like $80 or something like that. So for like $100, I was out the door with like a guitar setup. And I was like, well, I'm not getting like that Metallica sound, because I wanted to play Metallica so bad as a kid. And that's something I was trying to figure out. I'm like, how do you get those sounds? So I finally broke down and went to the guitar store, and they talked me into that Zoom 505. And I think I paid $60 or something for it out of my own money from cutting grass and washing cars.
Yeah.
And dude, I had a blast. But that was the very first lesson I learned about power needs, because the adapter was an additional adapter was like $25 or something like that. And I was like, man, but this pedal, you flipped it around, it took 4 AA batteries. So for a while I used 4 AA batteries, and so I could actually find the power supply, or even afford the original power supply, which I ended up having to do. But we had a Radio Shack, and every time I went to Radio Shack, I'm like, this plug doesn't work. This plug doesn't work. So like I couldn't get anybody at Radio Shack to help me. So as a kid trying to learn power needs, I had no idea, man. It wasn't until like I got into building pedal boards is where I got into making sure that everything has its own isolated power and all that. But that Zoom 505, I've spent hours with it, even just plugged in headphones like this and just jammed on it so much as a kid that I got used to what I could do with it. And it never bothered me. I know a lot of people are like, oh no, it's a full digital pedal, like it never bothered me.
Man,
Yeah. But I'm glad you shared your first experience as well. I've shared mine, and just wanted to thank you for being kind of our first victim on the signal path to actually record with me on Zoom and everything in order to, help us get this podcast going. So podcast has been, it's been a new adventure for me, and that's something I've been trying to learn and lean on a lot of guys that give me an opportunity to jump on their podcast. And except I get to be a goober on their podcast, but really trying to focus in and making sure our community is still thriving and we're still out there to help each other. So last question I got for you. What words of wisdom would you like to share for the group or the guys, or even if you wanted to travel back in time and tell yourself?
Interesting one. Without thinking too hard, words of wisdom would be so hard because it's like spend the money, but at the same time it's like, well, you don't have the money. Tell you what, we'll go down this bit of a rabbit hole if you'll let me. My very first boutique pedal at Carl Martin the Fuzz, and it was like an original. I mean, this pedal was like $300, and I maybe had nickels to rub together. I don't know why or how I afforded this thing, but it was way beyond what I was capable of using at the time. It was more than me. Like, I couldn't understand it, but I bought it, and the lesson out of that was I didn't need to spend that amount of money, or I didn't need to have a pedal that could offer so much when it wasn't the sound that I was going for anyway. It couldn't do what I was wanting. So I guess the biggest piece of advice is don't try to talk yourself into gear just because of its dollar value or its prestigious thing. I mean, honestly, if you're looking for that overdrive for you, you don't have to buy the Strymon Sunset. If you decide when you get it, it's not for you, or you spent too much money on it because it's too much for you or whatever. If a tube screamer serves your purpose, then just do that, Like, I spent way too much money on that Carl Martin pedal, and the whole thing I was looking for the whole time was a fuzz face. Or now it's a zonk, but at the time it was just like, I could have saved tons of hours and kind of a heartbreak over why can't this really expensive box do what I want? And it's just because it's not its purpose.
Yeah, you kind of find your sound. And so there's two words I've always said, and that's called tone journey. So we're on that mad tone journey, man. And I always put that play on words. So like always, I always want to try to wrap up with that and make sure that we're sharing a wealth of knowledge. And you being the young lad that you are, and doing small tours and gigging and everything, wanted to just share that I've seen you grow since I've met you. You've definitely grown as a player and definitely grown in gear. So proud of you for that, and also for sharing. For sharing your experiences on Signal Path.
Oh man, anytime. I would love to do it again if you let
me. Absolutely, man. So just in closing, I wanted to make sure that we're doing what we need to do. So with the Signal Path, we're a gear community and a mentorship. Is there anything that you could share as a mentor on our page,
Who I could share as a mentor?
or even if you could share things as a mentor on our page?
Yeah, I would love to, as far as, really trying to help other guys find what I'm trying to find. I mean, that always happens where, I don't want to say I was the first guy to do it, but I mean, before Eric Johnson got super crazy and really well known about, it was right before his 20th or maybe 30th anniversary tour for Avia Musicom. I mean, I was on his tones then before he blew up with Fender like he has now. And it's like, well, I would love to help guys find the Doyle sound. I'm a big Doyle Bramhall guy, and just monster player, monster tones, and I'm after that big fuzz sound he has. Like, it's just to me, that sounds like Freddie King on steroids, and I think that's the ultimate guitar tone. Is just that big, punchy, rip speaker tone, and it can't be emulated. You have to do it.
Yeah, man, just jump in there and do it. That's always been my advice too. So just wanted to be able to wrap up, and I really appreciated your time jumping on call with me today. And like I said, being a guinea pig for the group and everything. We talked about a lot of cool, interesting topics. Wanted to make sure we're sharing that signal path. Try to encourage people to jump in, share their content. Remember, we have a YouTube. We have our challenges. You can ask me anything, obviously, on the page. I also have Insta and Facebook as well. We now have a Patreon, so it can help with hosting this podcast as well. But definitely want to thank our guest today, Kaleb, as well.
Oh.
And you have any links or your band or anything you want to plug here before we go?
Yeah, I would love to plug. I mean, I'm pretty active on Instagram, and that's just, and no hyphens or anything, just Kaleb Young Music, KalebYoung Music. You can punch me in on Facebook. I'm pretty friendly. I don't bite. Yeah, that's kind of about it. That's kind of where I keep it professional. And, I'll be happy to answer any questions about anything. I'm just I like big amps, big guitars, but I like small amps and big pedals too. No small pedals. I don't like small tone. So, but yeah, I mean, I'm happy to talk guitars or anything. I spent a lot of my life living inside of a music store, so I'd be happy to help anyone, or just, talk gear with anyone about anything. It's such a generous community, and while I've given my little bits here, I've gotten a lot from the group. So very thankful for Tony for having me on, and very thankful for the Signal Path in general from the start to now. And I don't see that ending anytime soon. So,
awesome, man. I appreciate the kind words as well. Kaleb, thank you for being on today. And we're going to close with this. Yeah. Remember, guys, if you're searching for your tone journey, just holler at us. We'll be glad to answer any of your questions. And welcome to the Signal Path. All right. Thank you.